Hey, I'm Joshua Stump, the founder of Smokers Abbey Cigar Bar and Lounges. I was just interviewed by the Real Jason Duncan on the Root of All Success podcast. I think you should listen to it because it actually was pretty good. I enjoyed myself and talked about a lot of things I didn't think I was going to talk about today. So check it out on the Root of All Success.
Welcome to the Root of All Success with the Real Jason Duncan. A podcast that explores how the world's most powerful entrepreneurs unlocked success and how their stories can help you do the same. A successful educator turned entrepreneur, Jason has built multi-million-dollar businesses that have been featured in Inc. magazine and Entrepreneur magazine. His life's mission now is helping entrepreneurs live what he calls #the exit lifestyle. Introducing TEDx speaker, mastermind leader, author, entrepreneur, cigar aficionado, motorcycle enthusiast, and host of the Root of All Success, the Real Jason Duncan. The Real Jason Duncan.
Welcome back to another episode. I am your host, the Real Jason Duncan, and I've got a great guest for you today. And as you can see, if you're watching this on our YouTube channel, I'm smoking a nice cigar. What's the name of this cigar?
Mil Diaz.
Mil Diaz by Crown Heads, which is a Nashville-based cigar company. And the reason I'm smoking a cigar today is we're hanging out and shooting in person at Smokers Abbey in Gallatin, Tennessee. And my guest today is the founder and the owner of Smokers Abbey, Joshua Stump. Joshua, welcome to the show, man.
Welcome. Thank
Joshua or Josh? Like, I always call you Josh, but like a lot of people call you Joshua.
Well, there's two Joshuas here. So he goes by Josh, who's our manager, I should say, our shop manager. And so I usually go with Joshua. But sometimes they call me Big Josh and Little Josh because he's bigger than I am.
So to give everybody a little background, you haven't always run a cigar shop, but you've been doing this for a decade.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a decade. But your background really is in pastoral ministry. You've been on mission teams, supported some local mission work, planted a few churches, and then 16 churches.
Well, if you count the facilitating, facilitated 16 churches.
Facilitated 16 churches, which is a lot.
Yeah.
And he's got a lot of scars to prove that. And I'm gonna tell everybody the quick story of how we met because I think it's interesting. And so I too have a history as a pastor and spent 13 years in that endeavor. Didn't really start any like you did, facilitating new ones, but did have a couple of house churches I started and ran. But there was a season of life, was it between 15 and 16, somewhere in 2015, 2016, Christy, my wife, and I were kind of between house churches, really, and we didn't know what to do. And we were looking for a church that we could partner with to be a part of. And we somehow found the Keel, which was the church you were pastoring at the time, in East Nashville, online. I found it online, and I was just reading what you believe and what you do. I was like, okay, this sounds legit. Like, it sounds like I can get down with what they believe. And found out that you owned Smokers Abbey.
Yeah, I think you called me at the shop, if I recall.
I did.
I was like, oh, that was the weirdest phone call ever.
So I called down the shop in East Nashville, and I said, hey, I'm looking for Josh, and got you on the phone, and I said, hey, here's my story. I'd love to meet you, blah, blah, blah. And that's how we met. And
that's right, yeah.
And so it was cool to know a pastor who owned a cigar shop. I didn't know that. I hadn't, I got snuck cigars when I was in college. Like smoked Black and Milds, bought at the gas station on the way home.
Oh, yeah, gross.
But it wasn't until I was actually a pastor here in Gallatin, and one of the elders at our church, I saw him smoke a cigar one time, and I was like, you could do that?
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know you could do that. I thought you shouldn't do that.
So I never smoked really anything my whole life until I was quite a bit older. There was actually some guys at church, because in the old days, kind of at the height of the church planting thing, I had multiple services between morning and evening, and some of the guys from church were like, oh, you want to hang out and smoke a cigar? And I was like, I don't really smoke, one of those. So I hung out a few Sundays and didn't smoke, and then eventually I smoked a cigar with them, because kind of felt bad for being the only guy not smoking a cigar. And went back to church that night to do the last sermon, and it was like killer. I was on point. I was like really jacked up and excited, and I was like, whoa, what an incredible rush. I love this. And that was the beginning of the cigar thing. And then, so then getting into the cigar business aspect of it was sort of initially a addition to the ministry stuff that I was already doing. An addition to another means of connecting with people.
Why did you decide to start a cigar shop?
So I was kind of in that transitional stage. I was taking a 1-year sabbatical. This was a few years before I met you. So I had been going hard for nearly 20 years of ministry. So I was taking a year sabbatical. I was looking at moving to London to church plant in London and do some mission work in Europe. It's really fascinated with like the post-church culture, which Europe kind of hit that before we did. And so things didn't quite work out with immigration, and I was just trying to figure out what was next for me. And so I kind of started the first Smokers Abbey as a abbey being like a church for smokers. It started out kind of like as just a kind of a men's hang and place to connect with some guys in the community. But I would say during that time, which was like 2013, my mindset was still primarily focused on the connection of people and community for the sake of growing ministry projects. I didn't actually think that the cigar thing would become the thing that was the driving force of creating a tangible, functional, profitable, being the key word, business, a way to, provide for your family. So, but it did transition into that after a while, because it's actually, a lot of people go in the cigar industry in retirement, or they'll go in, or they've already made money somewhere in life. And so it's kind of like an interesting project business or hobby. A lot of people treat their cigar businesses like hobbies in a way. It's a hobbyist or a retirement thing. Something, I do it to stay busy, and not quite ready to retire like cigars. But when you get into it, you're like, no, this is like everything else. It's a business. It takes discipline and a huge learning curve and making tons of mistakes and all that stuff to figure out how to keep it open. I mean, there are guys out there that own shops that are losing money every month, but they have the money. So it's more like just something they do for their own personal enrichment and connection and community. So if you've got that, you can do it. But I was coming out of the nonprofit world, so I already didn't have any money, starting a business with no money. So I had to make it work. I had to figure out how to make a living at it.
So how did you get started without any money?
Well, I figured out how to get some money, but it wasn't enough money. But actually another pastor of mine, a retired pastor, was working in the foreclosure real estate market after the 2008 real estate collapse. So he hired me on to be a broker, and essentially it was kind of an interesting business model. But back when the banks were dumping all their foreclosures, they foreclosed on everybody. It couldn't pay after 2008. They foreclosed on the whole world, and then they had all the properties. Well, now they're not worth anything. You have too much supply. So they started auctioning these houses off sight unseen to individual investors. So this retired pastor was one of those investors, the investor partners. So they would buy 100, 200 houses a month sight unseen. So my first job with them was to travel out to these houses, and I would break into the locks and take pictures and say, oh, there's a hole in the roof, or there's no back wall, or there's a tree that's collapsed over it, or because some of them have been empty for 5 years. Because this was probably like 2012, 2013, I guess, around that time, a few years after the market had a time to dump, foreclosures happened, and then the property sit. they were not nice properties, is what I'm saying. But
Right.
because he was a missionally minded kind of guy, he came up with a program to essentially do a buy here, pay here program for people that didn't qualify for mortgages. So I started being a broker for him, which I would essentially interview people to kind of read people. Everybody had bad credit, so you're not looking at their credit score to see if they qualify for the mortgage, right? But you're kind of looking at their character,
Right.
doing a background check and see, are these decent people that are just down on their luck? So then we would help them get the property. Essentially, a lot of times we would maybe get a portion of the money that we paid for an auction, get them back in there, and they had to put sweat equity and work on the house, and essentially they're kind of paying rent to ownership. But it wasn't like a scam like you would see on some of the car lots around here. It was actually a very fair marketplace. So
Yeah.
and I would get a small commission off of that, and so I saved some of those commission checks to then buy my own property, which was a townhouse I bought for really cheap. It was foreclosed, and then I flipped it myself. I remodeled it at night, and after work, remodeled it, and then sold it. And I had what I thought was enough money to start a business, and so, I started little, and then it turned around pretty quick, about 6-7 years of just absolute hell on earth.
Well, I remember us having some very desperate's not the right word, but really on the verge of desperation conversations.
Yeah, sure.
Back when we had known each other for about a year and a half, and you're struggling. You had two partners at the time that had kind of left you high and dry, and you were probably kind of happy about it because of from my memory was that they weren't great, and you were figuring out, well, how do I do this? And I remember at one time I was driving my car back from East Tennessee. I'd been on a business trip and I was coming back, and we were talking. I remember this clear as day, and I don't know why. But you're like, Jason, man, I need 10 grand. Like, I got 10 grand, I'll give you. And I don't remember what it was. You were like, get half the shop or whatever. It was something crazy.
Yeah.
And I was in a position where I would have loved to have done it, but I absolutely couldn't. At that moment, it's like, dude, I can't help you. I can't do this. But I remember that. And now to look at, you've got this shop here in Gallatin. East Nashville has expanded. You got franchises
Two
in
franchise
Memphis
stores, a couple more coming, yeah.
Memphis and Austin, right?
Memphis and Austin, yeah.
So it did turn around. So congratulations.
Yeah, no, it did. And that's funny that I was begging for 10 grand because I think I spent that this morning on just some basic invoices.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
It's crazy how things change.
To go back to the days of only needing 10 grand.
Well, let me tell you how many times I've thought about that going, damn, I should have given him 10 grand because I would love to own this, man. Yeah. Like this is something that I like. Out of all the things that I want to do, I'm a teacher. God made me to be a teacher, and I love teaching. I love doing this. I love coaching. But in terms of running a business, I told my wife, Chrissy, I was like, I want to do the next business we buy. I want to buy something that is a consumable product that people come to and buy willingly without any need for sales.
Yeah. And
they do it repeatedly. So what are the three things? Cigars, liquor, coffee. Those three things, in my opinion, that's what I want to be in one, or if not all three of those businesses, because people will continue to come back and buy cigars. They'll continue to come back and buy booze. They'll continue to come back and buy coffee. Like one of those three things I want to do. So congrats. I'd love to own this.
And one thing I learned during COVID is that people, man, it sounds immoral to say it, but people don't give up their vices in hard times. Like I thought when COVID came down, we hadn't opened this shop yet. Because I actually found the second shop driving around at night in the winter, smoking in my car because I just had to get out of the house, during lockdown. And that's when I stumbled upon this building, fell in love with it up here. But I thought we were done because the city, Nashville, downtown Nashville, forced us to shut the doors. And I thought we weren't going to make it through that because we weren't really on our feet then either. Right. We were still on the rise, but struggling. And so what we did is I went down there every morning, sent out a few email blasts, I sit there and I took phone orders. And I wrote down people's address so they would buy the cigars. And then when I left at 5 o'clock, we'd close at 5. And I would drive to their house and drop them off on the porch before I went home. That we stayed open for months that way. But
wow,
I was shocked that people were still buying cigars when most of them weren't working either. But they needed to do something.
Got to do something, man.
You know, they're like driving around in their car in the middle of the night, past checkpoints to smoke a cigar, and you know. But yeah, it was good. We survived it, which was cool.
And you took on a new partner at some point during that time.
Yeah.
And is he still with the business today?
Yeah. So I actually have I have 2 partners still. I have one from way back, and then I mean it's been a few years. But both of them are very, very quiet.
Yeah, at one time.
One I haven't talked to in a really long time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just.
Well, there was a guy, and you don't have to talk about his name, but there was a guy who kind of came in. He was part of your church and was actually working in the shop, I thought, at some point. Wasn't he?
Yeah, he used to live over in the same side of town and would hang out and whatnot, but he's doing real estate stuff down south of the city, so I don't see him very often. But he's still involved, and I have another partner that does live closer to the shop. But kind of the consensus has been, you seem to know what you're doing, so just do what you do.
Yeah.
Because again, not too many people are going to invest in a cigar shop because they really want to work in the cigar industry. Most people are interested in sort of the hobbyist part of cigars, and so they like being connected to the business, but not necessarily feeling called to it. And not that I'm called to tobacco as much as I am to people, and that aspect hasn't changed in my life.
Well, that's an interesting piece of the story that I kind of wanted to dive into a little bit.
Sure.
Is that you named it Smoker's Abbey, and Abbey is I guess a word that typically refers to a church building.
Yeah.
We don't use that much here in the States.
Or also like a cloister. So I think about like monks, like, you know, I've got my St. Francis. This is one of our t-shirts. St. Francis is kind of like a cloister, a safe haven, a community, a space of living that's sacred.
Yeah.
Our motto is find rest for your soul. I've used that from day one. Because I think from a missional standpoint, that's what we try to do, is create a place where if someone wants community, they can find it. But if they also want solitude and quiet, they can find that too. So all of our staff and everyone is trained to kind of figure out what's the need. And if there's a need, then we try to provide that need in a way, like an emotional need or a social need. Or some people just live in chaos at work or at home, so they need to get away somewhere where they can be quiet. And so we provide a space for quiet. I've got spaces in the building that aren't used all the time, but people who need those spaces can have peace and quiet, you know.
Well, here we are. It's, you know, right now it's 1:30 in the afternoon.
Yep.
You got 5 or 6 people sitting at the stools
bar,
at the bar, hanging out, smoking, laughing, enjoying the day, where otherwise they would be sitting at home watching The Price is Right. You know, they're actually out connecting with people. And I love that about cigar. I think cigar shops, more than any of the 3 things I mentioned, coffee, cigars, and booze, I think cigars are that place for connect. And it's mostly men.
Yeah.
I know there's women. There's actually a woman out there right now. But but it's a place for men to connect. And very rarely do I go to a cigar shop and spend time completely alone. But I actually had one night I came up here. It was the night of the national championship football game.
Oh yeah.
And I came up here to watch it because I didn't have cable, and I couldn't get whatever channel it was on. I didn't have access to on my streaming. So I came up here and sat by myself, and I was having a pretty bad day, a pretty bad week, pretty bad month, backing on up, bad quarter, whatever. But I sat down by myself right outside this room. The TV was on, and I put in my earbud, and I had ChatGPT. This is a true story. I had ChatGPT, and on the app, I don't know if you've ever used the phone app, but you can talk to it, and it talks back it's like you can carry on a conversation with it. And so I sat and talked to it for about an hour. And I would just ask a question about stuff, and it would talk back, and nobody bothered me, which is the best part about this, is like nobody came over to bother me. And I didn't look like some idiot talking to myself. I actually had my earbud in, and I was just having a conversation with AI. But the more fun times have been when I'm hanging out with people like
We used
you.
to call that prayer, by the way.
Dear ChatGPT, amen.
Yeah.
So you call it Smoker's Abbey.
Yeah.
Now I understand why. What have you seen in your experience of running these shops for 10 years? Surely you've seen good come out of this, where you see somebody come through a dark time,
Yeah.
and the shop had something to do with it. You got any stories you could share?
I mean, far more than you have time for, but yeah, I mean, relationships, divorce. We've been the first point of contact for people that have lost their careers, their jobs, before they talk to their families. Like, yeah, I mean, that makes me emotional to think about it. But, you know, we've had family members who committed suicide. One of the greatest guys I met, I got a call one night at the shop, and this guy called me. He said, "What time do you close? I need a cigar really, really bad." And I said, told him, and he said, "Okay, I'm coming right now." So it was in the early days, so like we didn't have a lot of business, and sometimes we'd close early if we weren't super slammed. But I knew he was coming, so I stayed open. And he comes in, he goes, "Oh, man, yeah, my father-in-law took a gun into the Capitol building today and got arrested. It was all over the news, and I can't even get to my house for the media people." And I'm just like, "What?" He's like, "I just needed somebody to hang out with and talk to." It was the first time we ever had a conversation. You know, we're friends today, but his father-in-law had a mental break and just didn't know. He was an older guy. He didn't know what he was doing, what was happening. He got confused in his mind, and I don't even think it was a real gun or something like that. But it caused a lot of problems, you know, for his life. But I think I was the first person that this man talked to after that, you know, and we've had clients who have died. We've got a memorial. I had a lady that came with her attorney the other week, and she has created her entire will around the Abbey, what she wants her memorial service to look like. She's worked with her vendors to get Jack Daniels to sponsor her funeral.
Are you serious?
Yeah, and she has it all out in legal writing, and came by, and the attorney came and met and said, "Okay, well, whenever this is where the funeral is going to take place, and this is what's required, and this has already been prearranged." And I'm just like, it's freaking weird, man. But that's a testament to like the sense of community that is there. So it's been good times. We celebrate birthdays and anniversaries and job promotions, and we've remembered deaths and divorces and tragedy and all the stuff. So it is family, you know. It is very, you know, and it's interesting because Josh, the GM at this store, is one of my closest friends, and we were sitting on the porch last night, and even in our time together, we are talking about the people that are here. So it's like the conversation of like, "Hey, you know, that guy Jeff that comes in, yeah, you know, well, we had a conversation. He's a pretty lonely guy." And as it worked out, I kind of volunteered that we would go meet up with him and play pool after work one day next week, you know. And it's a real life. That's real stuff that happens, you know. And we talk about that. It's like, "Oh, we're going to go play pool with this guy." You know, it doesn't really have anything to do with our business other than he's just the guy that we've met that comes into the space. And so for me, that's the good and bad. And the bad part is sometimes your clients get on your nerves and you roll your eyes when you see them pull in. You know, and you're like, "Oh gosh, I know this dude's going to drop $50, but he's going to pluck my nerves, you know, the whole time he's here too." So it goes all the way. It's just like a real family. That is real family.
It sounds a lot like church, doesn't it?
It is. It's a lot. There's a lot of similarities to church.
Like you're the pastor of the Smoker's Abbey.
Yeah, and there are many of us because, well, actually, 3 of us just in the Nashville locations are actually ordained ministers. And then Memphis pastor, Austin, former pastor. So Jacksonville, Florida, which is a guy we're working with coming up, is minister as well. Work for Youth for Christ forever.
Isn't it interesting that cigar shops are typically built around a community vibe and a community feel? People know each other. And I go to cigar shops when I travel. Like I was telling you, I was in a cigar shop in Detroit 2 nights ago, and it seemed no matter where you go, it's like the people in there know each other and they're welcoming, and even if they don't know you, they were glad you're here.
Yeah.
And it's a lot like what you would expect churches to be, where you
But
come
how
in.
often do you go into cigar shops and you are also like, oh, it's clicky and closed down and weird? Because when I did a lot of traveling, I had a lot of those experiences where you go in and it's like the dude who walks through the saloon door and the record scratches, who's this guy? You know, and you're like, so I've been in communities, I've been in shops that were the opposite. They were really insulated. It was like a private club and you walked in on them and, you know, it's weird and
Just like churches.
just exactly. No, that's exactly right.
Because you go into some and they're very welcoming, they're open, they want to know you, hey, come sit with us. Hey, we're going to go out to lunch. You want to go with us? And then there's others that's like, you're in my pew.
Yeah.
Let's take a quick break to thank our amazing sponsors for making this podcast possible.
As an entrepreneur, I know that you have to deal with sales on a regular basis. I mean, every entrepreneur does. And if you aren't paying attention to sales as an entrepreneur, you're not going to be an entrepreneur for very long. But I've got a sponsor of this show called Dub that helps you bring the personal back to sales. If you want to figure out how to improve content creation, improve client trust, improve your sales process, decrease the sales cycle, because we all know time kills deals. If you want to increase client bookings and increase conversions, you need to take a look at Dub. There's a special offer for Dub for listeners to The Root of All Success at therealjasonduncan.com/Dub, and that's DUBB. What Dub does, I've been using this for years. I'm a huge fan, and I'm so honored that they're our primary sponsor of the podcast. But they have helped over 60,000 businesses around the world communicate better, to make sales easier, to make sales more personal. And Dub is built for growing teams. I mean, you can set up video emails, you can set up custom onboarding, you can do admin reporting, anything you need around video and sales and automation. Dub is there. You can try Dub now. Your conversions to sales are waiting. All you got to do is go to therealjasonduncan.com/Dub. And there you're going to get 2 weeks for free to try Dub. Plus, you're going to get 50% off your first 2 months of Dub. You can't beat that. So go check it out. Go to therealjasonduncan.com/Dub.
Thanks for listening to our sponsors. Now, back to the show.
And a lot of what I'm sharing with you is like my best intentions. Just like everybody, they have their best intentions or the person
For
they
sure.
want to present. But in being somewhat self-aware, you're also like, I need to actually have my best intentions moving forward. So I'm a workaholic. My kids think I'm a workaholic. My wife thinks I'm a workaholic. And it's not because I love work more than anything else, but you've been so desperate to collapse that your brain switches on at some point where you're just working constantly trying to keep ahead of any potential drama, right? You know, it's probably a good subject for the therapist, right? But that workaholic thing, sometimes I will get in the mode of getting stuff done so aggressively that I have to stop and remind myself, oh, this is a job about people. So I have to stop and like go engage with someone, because I find that, or sometimes I'll come in and my employees, it just feels like they're just cutting the crap all day with people. And I'm like, whoa, can you get some stuff done? And, but then I have to remind myself that is the job, you know? And sometimes I have to work behind the scenes a little extra to make sure that things are clicking so that my guys have time to invest in those relationships. Because at the end of the day, the relationships, I think, are really the only, anyone can sell a cigar. Anybody can sell a product. But I think for us, it has been those very intentionally connected relationships that have given us longevity. And I think that we'll continue to. But, you know, how many great businesses started out that way and then they get really successful, and then the thing they were loved for, they can't reproduce it, you know, with growth. And so that's something I'm always thinking about as well.
I guess that's probably the romantic side of thinking about owning a cigar shop for me, or a coffee shop, or a liquor store, a nice high-end liquor store. I'm not interested in serving drunks, but like where you serve people that have discerning tastes, just like you would serve discerning tastes in cigars or coffee. Is the romantic side of that idea for me is what you're explaining. It's the connection with the customer, because I was in pastoral ministry, as we talked about, for 13 years, and I was not a very good pastor. I was a good preacher, a good teacher, but part of connecting with the people, I never really got it. I never was good at it. And then now as a business coach and an author and a speaker, I connect with my clients, but not the same way. It's different.
Yeah.
And I really, in my brain, I would love to be here when somebody walks in and they're, hey, Jason, they know me and I know them, and I'm helping them have that comfort and that peace and that place to hang out. And I guess to me, that's the part that I really would enjoy.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would or not, but I think I would enjoy that. Seems like you very much enjoy it.
I enjoy it most of the time. And when I don't enjoy it, I have to remind myself why I used to enjoy it.
Yeah.
And sometimes, like in the early days, I was working day and night, running shifts,
Oh, I remember you were always at the shop at East.
just work, because, I couldn't afford a bunch of employees, and so you have to find the balance, you have to find the balance. You also have to be pretty good at setting up boundaries, because you will get those people that know that you're available, and so now you're available for everything, and it's like, that's not sustainable either. So you have to kind of find balance, figure out how much time you can give to a person and to their problems and to things. And there are times I have to say, hey, I sell cigars, man, I'm not your pastor. And then there's other times where people are like, gosh, that was some of the best advice or life coaching or whatever that we've had, that I've ever had. I didn't think I'd get that from a cigar shop. And it's like,
You got to have a membership subscription model. If you want counseling, it costs extra.
right. But I'm certified as a spiritual director. I was a pastor for a long time. And so, there's a couple that just had a baby not long ago, and we still are friends on the internet. They live across the country, but they used to live right behind the Abbey. And when they were engaged, they were getting in these petty fights, and sometimes it would happen in the bar. So, and I find myself in the middle of these discussions and trying to help facilitate communication between a couple. And they didn't even know any of my history. They didn't know I actually was qualified to do those things to an extent. I know a thing or two about relationships. And
You've had
conflict resolution.
Well, you've had a lot of experience now as a pastor. You did that for how many years?
Well, technically, at least 25. Yeah, at least 25 years.
And so for the last, 3 years, you've officially been out of that role as a vocation?
Since May, I started 3 years ago to get out of it.
Right.
But 6 months it has been. And then I took a hard break for 6 to 8 months from church life. I visited some places and got bummed out, and now I've actually just kind of returned back to my roots of going to a church I originally founded that my old associate pastor took over. So, and I love it because I can just kind of chill in the back, get to know people. If somebody asks me for insight or advice, I can give that. It's more of a small community. It's a smaller community, It's because when I took a break from church stuff, I missed the community of that too. Because this is a different community than someone buying cigars from you,
Yeah.
Sometimes you need relationships that will give and take. And sometimes they get lopsided. Sometimes you're giving more than you're receiving from certain relationships. So you got to align yourself with people that you can receive from occasionally. So you got to find that balance in relationships.
Well, I really, as a consumer of the product and service that you peddle, I am a grateful consumer of that, and I enjoy it. We lived in Gallatin here for 21 years, 22 years, and we just moved. And so this now is about a half-hour drive for me. So, but I still plan to come occasionally. I came, as a matter of fact, I came up here the other night, hung out with a co-host of one of the other shows I do, and we sat for a couple, 2-3 hours. And what I love now is that back in the day, you would close early because nobody's here. Well, now it's like you guys stay open. You'll be here an hour later or 2 hours later because people are still here buying, smoking cigars. You're like, it was funny, Josh. One night I was here about a month ago, and he was like, just so when I got here, he's like, hey, he welcomed me appropriately, but he goes, just so you know, hard close at 9 tonight. I'm like, I get it. It was in the middle of the week, and so at 9, 10 minutes, he's coming around. Hey, you need anything else? Because we're closing at 9, and so we got out. But then I was here Saturday night, and you guys close at 10.
Yeah.
And I figured, okay, so at 10 o'clock, like the people are still walking in buying cigars, and Josh hadn't said anything. I thought, I guess he's staying later. And then he came around about 10:45. Hey guys, last call. We're closing at 11. It's like, okay, but isn't that cool? Like you went from the having to close early because nobody's here to having to stay late because people won't leave.
That's true.
And
unfortunately, in the East, it's like 2 and 3 a.m. now.
Yeah, well, that's a little more densely populated area.
It's right downtown, in the city.
So why Gallatin? Why did you come here?
Yeah, so I found this. I didn't know Gallatin existed, but I had moved in the middle of COVID to Goodlettsville, so which is down between Gallatin and downtown. And I had to get out of the house, so I would go out, especially when it was really cold, just get in my truck and drive, smoke a cigar, and listen to the radio and explore. So I kept driving north, and I was like, this town is really adorable. Like, it has a little square downtown, and there's a lot of cool little family-owned businesses. It really reminded me of where I grew up at in Virginia. So it kind of had a hometown feel to it, and I was like, I like this. I like the vibe of it. And then I kept seeing this empty bank building, and it was just sitting there for months and months. It was always empty. And I was like, man, I really would love to turn a bank into a cigar lounge. And so we did. We turned the vault into the humidor and turned the cashier's thing into the bar. And we're sitting in one of the bank manager's offices right now. And it was just cool. It was a good vibe. And it worked out. And then the people here have supported the vision. And when I first started talking to people about it, they were like, oh, there's been multiple cigar shops that's opened in Gallatin over the years, and none of them lasted. But also Gallatin's now just, I tell everybody it's a bedroom community of Nashville. You can really tell by the traffic flow because everybody is commuting into town. So even the fact that we still get people during the day is good because a lot of people are commuting into the city, and then they'll stop here on the way home, or weekends are great because people are just looking to unwind. But yeah, that's kind of how it came. It was just, sometimes for me it's like an intuition, like I have ideas where I'm going next, and so I have done some late night driving and just feeling it out, and I feel like I'll get a vibe on a place, and then eventually the timing, the finances, and everything will work out at once. So I talked to guys interested in franchising. In fact, I'm going to meet Thursday with another guy that was in my youth group. Now he's an adult and makes good money, but he wants to open a place. But it's like I try to tell people, it's like, I don't like go crazy looking for spaces, like trying to find the perfect space. I feel like they kind of come to me. I know it sounds weird, but I kind of just wait. I wait for the opportunity. So people, especially in the business world, they're always like, well, what's your growth model, and what's your 5-year plan, your 7-year plan, I'm like, I don't know, man, I'm feeling it out, because location and interest and opportunity, they all seem to merge at a time to do a new thing. It's like for me, I've actually spent the last year working on, I've never had a web store, online store. And the main reason is it's very competitive, but also I never felt that I could do it well enough, like do it the way that I wanted it to be done. So I'd rather do nothing than to do something poorly, because it's just so stressful to constantly fail. So I've actually taken the last year of focusing my thoughts and energy and finding the right people to build the store out and to do the things I want to do, and talking to different people about unique angles. Like anything, when we do a store, it won't just be a store that you can buy cigars on. It's when we launch, it's going to be a unique sort of experience. That's you're going to get some stuff that's not available everywhere, you know. So it's going to be a curated sort of vibe of special and limited edition things, special things, you know. So I've spent a lot of time thinking about that. So in a way, I am opening a third store, but it'll be online. But that actually has been more challenging than opening up a brick and mortar in some ways, because you have to think about everything differently.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you came here, and I'm glad that I was wrong, because when I saw that you were putting it in here, I was like, that ain't never going to last. It's not going to work. It's a bad location, bad spot, bad part. Not bad part of town. That's not what I mean. But like in terms of ideal location based on who I would have thought would have been your demographic to come, this is not the part of town to do that in.
I was aware that there was going to be a little bit of that. There is. It's silly to me because when you live in a city as big as Nashville, you'll drive 4 miles, but it takes you 45 minutes to get there. But people will still do that. But when you get in a smaller town, there is like an invisible wall. I call it the invisible fence. And it has taken some attention to get people from South Gallatin to come to North Gallatin to get the thing that they want. When they were driving 30 minutes, 40 minutes an hour in the other direction to get the same product. But there's a mental, so you weren't 100% wrong. That mental blockage was a thing, but it just takes time to overcome it. And because to me it's silly, it's like, dude, I talk to guys, I'm like, this is literally a 3-minute drive. But in their minds, it was in the wrong place, you know. So it's like, well, I'm going to drive 30 minutes that direction to get the product. And so that it was a little bit of a challenge. It probably took us about 8 months to get past the barrier.
Well, I'll tell you what else did it is that the vibe here and the decor is so cool. Like this is one of the coolest shops I've been in, and I've been in I would say a lot. I've been in a fair number, but the vibe here is very unique to your style. The Abbey style is very specific. I mean, if you ever go to the east and then you come to Gallatin, same vibe, same
vibe and really different cultures.
Very different group of people.
Yeah, very different culture.
Because people that I've come here with that don't know East, they'll say, "Is it the same thing in the East?" I'm like, "Nah." Like it looks the same.
It is, but it isn't.
But it's a completely different group of people.
Yeah, it is.
And those people could hang out here and vice versa. Yeah. I think they could hang out here more than the people who come here can hang out there. What do you think?
Maybe, yeah.
Maybe?
Oh, yeah. No, I see. Well, okay.
Like the Gallatin folks, the group that hangs out here would probably not fit in as well there. But the East people would come up here and be like, yeah, this is all right. But they wouldn't stay.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I mean, like, there's a cultural, social, political divide, which that was a challenge. That was an interesting challenge to overcome. So, because it's actually like, for me, I was a more conservative person living in a very liberal part of the city. So I had to figure out how to not be so intense and to blend in with the crowd. Well, then as I aged, I became more progressive. And I guess as far as like church stuff, I've always had tattoos and listened to rock music, so I've always been a little bit edgy. But then as I got older, I became a little bit more liberal. Then we come up here to Gallatin, where it swings really hard to the right. And like this room in particular, you probably noticed in the background, there's a lot of military iconography. I call it military icons. And it's because we have a huge military, and military, former, current military, and we honor their vets, Veterans are amazing people, I have a whole family line of veterans, just not me. I went into Jesus and rock and roll and bar ownership. But we honor our vets, and we give them a space. And it's interesting, though, because we can talk about the same subject here, and I'll get one perspective of an issue, and then go to the East store and have a very, very different perspective of the issue. And I had some employees in East that were really challenged to work up here because they were finding themselves sort of getting in these more controversial political conversations and stuff. You know, but like me and Josh, we grew up with these guys our whole life. He's from rural Missouri, and I'm from rural Virginia. And it's like we went to school with these people. You know, our parents served with these people. Like, this is not a problem for us, so we just go and blend in. And it is interesting, I will say, something I haven't mentioned is specifically in the downtown area. When we first opened, it was 100% segregated by race. So it was a very small building, if you remember, before our expansion. We had all of the whites that sit in the front and all the blacks would sit in the back. And I finally started cracking Rosa Parks jokes like, you don't have to be in the back, you know. It's like, so it really bothered me, actually. It really kind of gave me a sense of anxiety because my kids were going to school with people of different ethnicities and race, and they were raised and learned how to get along. But I'm like, why is this divide in this shop? Because we were in a transitional community that was being gentrified. And so what I started to do was look for the influencers of each one of those communities, and I would cut side deals with them. So I would offer them gift cards or free product, free cigars, if they would make moves to interact with the other groups. So I was doing a covert operation of blending. But what's happened now after 10 years, you have blacks, whites, Hispanics, you know, Latinos, black, white, Latino, everyone is together. There's no more segregation. So they're together, they're doing life together. Like holidays, Thanksgiving comes up, all the people that don't have family in town, doesn't matter what color or race you are, they're having meals together. Some of them have started businesses together. And so being able to break that divide has been really challenging, but really fruitful, I think. The other thing we wanted to do was create a safe space for women. Women typically either feel unsafe in a cigar shop because they got a bunch of guys gawking at them, or they feel like they're outsiders because there's a stereotype that comes with women smoking cigars. Maybe they don't know what they're doing or whatever. So we just established a culture of like really strong respect for women. You don't disrespect women. You don't put them in a position that makes them feel uncomfortable. You know, we'll call you out and remove you from the premises if you do that. And so now women come to the Abbey and they feel safe there, you know, and our Austin store has a female co-owner and she's really great with women too. So like, it's been a part of our culture to like make sure that women feel safe, that regardless of your race. And the other thing I love is you have pastors. We got pastors and religious people that sit around and hang out with atheists and agnostics and Buddhists, and they all interact. And I never feel conflict. It's like, honestly, like we see a very divided country on TV, right? Yeah. Everything's divided by political party and race and religion and all this stuff. All the news is we're all divided. But like in the culture of the shop, it's not true. Like people that vote for different people, that were raised under different economic statuses, they come from different religions, they do life together, and they all seem to get along pretty well, actually. And so I hope that's actually what America is, and that we're just getting fed something else on the media, because I see it in real life that. And to me, that's the stuff I'm most proud of. At the end of the month, instead of looking at my numbers, which you still have to look at numbers, but I try to think about those other things. See, was this struggle this month? Did something productive and good come from that? You know, and it does all the time, surprisingly.
I think what you've touched on there is really important because we are being lied to. We're being fed, you know, whatever the media, right and left, wants to feed to tell us that we're divided.
Right.
But if you just quit looking at the TV, you quit listening to the radio, and you show up in places like this, you see what life really is.
Yeah.
You know,
right.
there are people that come to this shop. I can only imagine, I'm not saying this because of firsthand knowledge, but I can only imagine people that come to the shop and hang out and they'll have great conversations with somebody who is on a different side of the political spectrum, who's a different color, who's different what different race, different whatever ethnicity, different belief, different religious perspective.
Yeah.
They'll have conversations here and get along just fine. But if you ran into that person somewhere else, you might have an opinion, oh, they're racist.
Yeah.
Or they're a bigot, or they're a right winger or something.
Yeah.
But in real life, like that person gets along with everybody.
Yeah.
Like nobody's paying. I don't think people are paying attention.
Yeah.
I have a story. This is just coming to mind. I was at we were at a fast food restaurant on a trip, my wife and I, and we had stopped at this fast food restaurant. Don't even remember which restaurant it was. And we walked in, just the two of us, and there was a black lady behind the counter waiting. There was another black person waiting to order, and then there was the two of us, which we're white, and then this white guy walked in, pretty redneck looking, right? I'm no judgment, just looked like a big old redneck. And he walked up to the counter. Country boy. I think he even had a flag, like a southern, a rebel flag somewhere on him. And he walked up and was waiting his turn. And then he had an interchange with the black person. I think it was a black lady who's waiting to order. And they had an interchange, or he was saying, no, you go first. Very polite. And then when he got up to the counter, he and the person behind was polite. Then I was making jokes with the lady behind the counter because I think I ended up knowing somebody she knew. Mm-hmm. And then I went and sat down, and I just sat back and said, this is what America really is. Like, we're all really nice and respectful to each other in our most true moments.
Yeah.
But if you'd have seen that guy, the redneck in his truck out there with a rebel flag, that's a racist. No, he's not. That's not the reality. So our world is very different. And I think what cigar shops do, coffee shops to a different degree, they provide that space where people can get no barriers. We just talk. And again, I think it's very akin to what church should be.
Yeah, it's true.
You've built something pretty successful here, man. Congratulations.
Well, thank you.
What do you think is the key to the success of this shop over time?
I mean, I think some of the keys are just being persistent, consistent, so people know what to expect. We're closed 2 days a year. Thanksgiving and Christmas, that's it. We're open all the rest of the times. And so we have consistency. And I think, at the end of the day, not treating people as a commodity, but seeing their humanity, I think actually is a huge part of it. Because like I said, anybody can sell a cigar. I think we're selling more than a cigar here. We're trying to sell connection and community and human decency and companionship.
Yeah. How do you define that word success? What does that mean to you?
Well, I mean, for me, if you're talking financial success, for me is getting the bills paid, taking care of your people, and taking care of your people means taking some money home to pay the bills. I don't necessarily have a certain number that I got to hit or anything like that to feel successful. I would say I agree that I'm successful. There are days I don't feel that way, like every other human. There are days you have to be reminded by someone else that you're successful. And sometimes that comes by one of your people sitting at the bar, grabbing your arm and just saying, thank you for being here. Which happens a whole lot more than you would think. That people actually show a genuine appreciation that you're here, which is pretty cool. It's pretty cool that happens.
Well, you've put in a decade at this.
Yeah.
And you've had a lot of rough years.
Yep.
And now you're on the good side of those rough years.
Well, we'll see.
Moving in the right direction, right?
Yep.
Well, so if you could speak to entrepreneurs who listen to the show that are looking for inspiration and advice.
Yeah.
From someone who's taken the cuts and the bangs and the bruises, but have persisted.
Yep.
And pushed through to a place of satisfaction and success, what would your advice be to that person?
Well, some of the advice would be probably plan on 15 to 20% more investment up front than what you think. That would be good. Secondly, is don't try to grow too fast. There's a lot of pressure in the world to multiply and to grow fast, and I see a lot of businesses go out of business. I've seen a lot of businesses open and shut, of all types of businesses since I've been open. And sometimes it's excessive growth. The other thing is, like, you just have to have a certain level of integrity. If you say you're going to do something, you have to do it. You have to follow through with it. So, like, being honest and transparent is going to affect your vendors, your customers, acknowledge people. I would give the same advice in parenting as I would to a small business owner. It's like, one of the most important things you can do with your kids is let them know that they are heard, that they're seen, they're acknowledged, they're appreciated, their concerns are heard, and there's some action to resolve conflict, in the family structure. So you have to do that at the same time. Especially in the cigar industry, there's so many shops. One of the things that irritates me the most is the stereotype of the curmudgeonous old man who runs a shop, and he's cranky and he's an asshole to everybody. And it's just like, you can't do that. It doesn't matter if you're, polishing shoes on your new shoe stand, or you're making pizzas, or whatever your business is. If you're working in the tech sector, you have to do what you say you can do it with integrity, and communicate honestly with people, because we might get in a thing where somebody wants me to order something special. Well, I can make an order, but I can't control manufacturing and shipping, and whether the reps are doing their job, or whether the company even provides that product anymore. So there's a lot of, when I make a commitment to a customer, I want to get this product for you. It's something special. There's 20 things that are not in my control. So, like, maintaining constant communication, like a tracking, here's your tracking number. In a way, it's like, I have to call clients. Hey, I spoke with the rep. We're working on getting this product, but there's a delay in Nicaragua in the manufacturing department. So in reality, I just want to prepare you. It might be 2 months before this thing that you want is available. Especially during COVID, manufacturing still, even in the cigar industry, is slowed. They've had factories closed. There's wood shortages on boxes. I mean, there's all kinds of crazy stuff that happens. It's outside of your control. So communicate openly. Even if you're telling your clients something they don't want to hear, it's better than not communicating to them, because then they're always thinking you're pulling something over on them. I have a tendency to be skeptical about, you know this about me. I'm pretty skeptical about people trying to sell me something or promise me the moon. And lack of communication is a big way to build suspicion. So I try to communicate really openly with customers. I try to fulfill my obligations to them. And take care of your employees. If you have to hire people, you got to take care of them.
Yeah.
I have people all the time who's like, hey man, why don't you get me a job? And I'm like, well, no one has quit in 10 years. Like, no one's quitting. I've had people that have moved out of town or moved to other careers and stuff. But I've had guys that have been here as long as I have been, since day one, and they haven't left, because it's what they love. They can take care of their business, and so, yeah, don't be a shade ball, I guess.
Well, let's finish with this.
Yeah.
2 things. Tell everybody, first of all, before I ask you the last question, how would people get in touch with you and or the shop so that they could connect?
Yeah, I mean, you can email info@smokersabbey.com. Call one of the shops. There's more likely you'll run into me. But yeah, you shoot me an email. I check my emails every day. In fact, this store has been open for 3 years, and I'm just now getting around to building a website. I've never had a website for this store, which is actually kind of absurd to think about it.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurs build your website before you open, but I didn't, and we still were fine.
So info@smokersabbey.com.
And smokersabbey.com is the website.
Yeah.
And there'll be an online store and a portal that will hopefully come up here in the next 2 months. We should get everything finally wrapped up after a year working on it.
All right, so now, technical question.
Yeah.
What's your best cigar advice for someone who smokes cigars? It could be anything, about how to light it, how to choose it, like where to buy them, where not to buy them, besides Smoker's Abbey, like what?
Right.
Like,
well, I always tell people, like, don't get caught up in marketing, and don't get caught up in the class thing. You have a really nice car. We went to lunch in it today. It's a nice car.
Thank you.
I don't have a nice car. I have an old practical truck with 300,000 miles on it, and I don't have a car note. So what I would say, like, even in the cigar world, is like, there's a culture of luxury that comes with cigars. And this is one of the things I wanted to confront was, if someone thinks a product is luxury, if you're not a luxury person, then you don't dream about being a part of it. Some people don't think they'll ever have the nice car like you will, right? So maybe they start with the Honda. You know, a Honda is a really nice car for some people. Sometimes it's the nicest car they've ever had. So what I tell people with cigars, there's a cigar for every person on every budget. Like, what I do is, part of the job that I do is I go out and for people I know that I want in my business, but they don't have luxury money, I want to still find the best product and best experience for them. So if they are spending $3 on a cigar versus a $30 cigar, I want that $3 cigar to be the best experience you can get for $3. So you can be a part of the cigar culture even if you don't have a ton of money. I've got guys that come in and they never spend more than $3.54 a day, but they're still part of the community. They still get to enjoy cigars. And then some of them have progressed, and now they spend $20 and $30 on a cigar. And I love to see them expand. In fact, I've seen guys start concepts of businesses here and go from $3 to $30 cigar. And I love seeing that too, you know, and
that's awesome.
And sharing that. But so I would say, don't get suckered into marketing. Just because you've heard about it doesn't mean it's the best. We love boutique cigars. We love a lot of craft stuff. Some small companies we work with that are doing great things. Don't get hung up on the price. The most expensive isn't always the better. There are certain brands, I can't dog on any of them because I still have to work with these companies, but there are people that will come in and ask for this brand. It's a $30 cigar. And I look at the guy's 21, just got married, starting out in life, and I'll be like, I've got a $9 cigar that is actually better than this $30 cigar. You know, and so if I can get him into the $9 cigar and let him, you know, because he might do the 30, but he's only going to come once. And I can get him in a $9 cigar that's as good, maybe better, because by the time you subtract marketing, then he's going to be more apt to return, you know, and to enter into the space of community, if that makes sense. So, yeah, man, and just stay away from YouTube when it comes to looking up cigar culture, you know, because you got to cut it and light it and hold it a certain way, and just light the thing and enjoy it, and don't overthink it. That's my advice on cigars.
I love it. Well, Josh, thank you for our friendship for all these years. I know we've lost touch for a while, but like life just happened. But we've reconnected recently, and it's a pleasure to see you succeeding and doing well and having a great shop here. Thank you for sharing the insight of how the shop got started and your insight in all this. I think it's very interesting that the church culture, which we both come from, and the cigar culture, and how similar it is and who's doing it better. I think it's a very interesting thing. But thank you for letting us have the show here today. It's been a pleasure.
No worries, anytime.
Well, make sure you tune in again next time when we talk with yet another very successful entrepreneur about his or her journey to success. Make sure you tune in on all the podcast players. If you haven't subscribed or rated the show, it'd be very nice of you to go do that today. I would really much appreciate it. And as always, I am the Real Jason Duncan, and Jesus is King.
Attention business owners. Attention business owners. Feeling burnout from running your business? Uncertain if you're nearing burnout? Take our free 10-question business burnout test at businessburnouttest.com to discover where you stand. With just 10 quick questions, you'll learn how to immediately begin making changes to regain freedom and success. Cut your daily operations time in half. Improve your quality of life and prepare your business for your future exit without losing revenue or profit. Visit businessburnouttest.com now and take the test. Thank you for listening to another edition of The Root of All Success with the real Jason Duncan. If you've enjoyed this week's episode, visit therootofallsuccess.com to access the show notes and other helpful resources. Follow Jason on social media at The Real Jason Duncan. See you again next time here on The Root of All Success.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.